Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's mini lesson. I'm Mrs. Frankie, and I will be showing you how to apply our weekly reading goal to a familiar text. You can use what we're doing here and apply it to your own independent reading. So I'm sure you've noticed that in our emails this week, you've seen a fourth grade reading goal. Now, usually in school, you would have a different goal to work on depending on where you are in reading. But for distance learning, to make it easier for everyone, we're all going to be practicing the same skill. So this week's skill is discuss a confusing part or chapter. Now, strong readers understand that some parts may be confusing, causing them to reread as they carry content from one chapter or episode to the next. This is an extremely important skill, especially as we're moving towards higher reading levels. We never want to continue reading after we read a confusing part. We want to make sure that we stop and go back and use all of the tools that we have in our reader's toolbox to try to understand a confusing part. So for today, we will be revisiting a familiar text, The Tiger Rising. We all read this book in class together, so I thought it would be great to share again. That way we all are on the same page and we know exactly what we're talking about. So here we go. Here we have a section of chapter 1. Now, I'm not going to read this whole chapter, but I'm going to start about halfway through. Now, this is the morning after Rob first sees the tiger in the woods. So here we go. You can follow along. That was what Rob thought about as he stood beneath the Kentucky star sign and waited for the bus. The tiger. He did not think about the rash on his legs, the itchy red blisters that snaked their way into his shoes. His father said that it would be less likely to itch if he didn't think about it. And he did not think about his mother. He hadn't thought about her since the morning of the funeral, the morning he couldn't stop crying, the great heaving sobs that made his chest and stomach hurt. His father, watching him, standing beside him, had started to cry too. They were both dressed up in suits that day. His father's suit was too small, and when he slapped Rob to make him stop crying, he ripped a hole underneath the arm of his jacket. There ain't no point in crying, his father had said afterward. Crying ain't going to bring her back. It had been 6 months since that day. 6 months since he and his father had moved from Jacksonville to Lister, and Rob had not cried since, not once. The final thing he did not think about that morning was getting onto the bus. He specifically did not think about Norton and Billy Threemonger, waiting for him like chained and starved guard dogs eager to attack. Rob had a way of not thinking about things. He imagined himself as a suitcase that was too full, like the one that he had packed when they left Jacksonville after the funeral. He made all of his feelings go inside the suitcase. He stuffed them in tight and then sat on the suitcase and locked it shut. That was a way he had not thought about things. Sometimes it was hard to keep the suitcase shut, but now he had something to put on top of it, the tiger. So I want to look back at this section because it seems a little confusing, especially reading it the first time. In this paragraph right here, they begin talking about a suitcase. Now, I imagine that some of you thought that Rob was actually carrying a suitcase with him. But if we look back at this paragraph, we can see that the suitcase is not real. So let's take a look. Rob had a way of not thinking about things. He imagined himself as a suitcase that was too full, like the one he had packed when they left Jacksonville after the funeral. He made all his feelings go inside the suitcase. He stuffed them in tight and then sat on the suitcase and locked it shut. So it seems that Rob is carrying around this imaginary suitcase with him full of feelings. He is not walking around with a big luggage, rolling it around with him to school and into the woods. It seems to me that after his mother's died, he kind of harbored all of his feelings inside and locks them away and doesn't let them come out. So this suitcase is just a symbol for all of the things that he's keeping deep down inside, because it seems that his father doesn't like to talk about his feelings either, which makes it almost impossible for Rob to share how he's feeling. So this suitcase is always being lugged around with Rob, and the more experiences that he keeps inside, the more emotions he keeps inside, the heavier the suitcase will become. So I hope you noticed that after reading this passage, I didn't just move on and continue reading. I stopped and reread a confusing part to make sure that I understand what the author is trying to get across. So readers, please make sure that you are stopping and rereading important parts of your books. This week, we're working with the Pixar film. So of course, you can rewatch the video as many times as you need to make sure that you understand exactly what the characters are doing and what the events are in the short film. I hope this helped, and I hope that you will apply this to your independent reading. I'm so proud of all of the work that you have been doing at home, as is Mrs. Johnson and Mrs. Mizrak and Miss Figueredo and Mrs. Swickus. We miss you all, and we will see you soon.